Last time, Trishul shared how he built up teams to eventually achieve fire. Today, we're going to find out why he's never going to build a team again.
Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Agti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Agti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area. I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today. And thanks everybody for listening and watching.
Great to be here as well. So, last time we started on Trishul's origin story, and in classic Trishul and Aaron conversation, we could not get under an hour, and we weren't even halfway done. So, today is part two. We had a really good story. I learned a lot about how you had built up teams multiple times throughout your career, and you really enjoyed that, and you seem to be successful at that, building teams. And there were two things that kind of we got to at the end that I want to pick up with today. One, you achieved fire. You financial independence, retire early. So there's been a lot of, I don't want to say research, but a lot of commentary on the internet about this idea of just being financially independent early. And you achieved this. You got to a point where you stopped working because you had enough assets to support your lifestyle. And so one, I want to talk about that just idea, like how your self-awareness. How did you know that you had enough? The other thing is so much of that story was about building teams, and now you have a lifestyle practice where you're never going to build a team again? Question mark. Was that like, why would you not have employees if this has gone so well for you in the past? So I'll let you kind of decide where you want to start, either self-awareness about enough or why no employees.
Yeah, let's start with the former. Maybe that's a good transition point. Like, well, what led to the hey, I think we're good here. Let's leave the career. That's essentially what I did in 27, or I decided to do in 2017, 2018. So yeah, I around that time, again, I mentioned I was it's a confluence of many things. What was kind of going around that time is, again, my wife and I just had a baby, and I'm home on maternity leave. It just so happened here in Florida we had a hurricane, so literally that same week, the first day we come home with my daughter, there's no power. Like the whole South Florida is decimated with Hurricane Irma. And I'm trying to manage a pretty high stakes career, with a hedge fund and a lot going on. So it's it's challenging to kind of disconnect and be home with the family. And you can kind of realize, throw add in a hurricane on top of that and just a lot of other things, and it's a bit overwhelming. And at the same time, again, I did sit down with my wife, and I'm like, oh, hey, we don't actually have to be under this much pressure.
Yeah.
And it is possible for us to just, put the career aside and focus on family and just do something totally different. So I guess that was the impetus for the conversation of what was going on, in our household. And yeah, essentially we did have enough saved up. Again, the backstory in the last conversation is doing pretty well with the career, but at the same time being very diligent over the prior 15 or so years, saving a ton, investing it prudently, having the money grow. And yeah, it had reached that point where essentially it could support us.
So I want to ask, like, it is not, I'll say it's unusual to think, oh, we have enough, I could be done. And my understanding based on our past conversations that you had no plans of starting the current business. Like that kind of
Mhm.
evolved from the blog, but you were prepared to just be done.
Mhm.
Whereas a lot of people, like the idea of taking a break, like, oh, new kid, hurricane, just moved, like taking a break and then figuring out, okay, what am I going to do next? Like that is much more common. And so I'm curious, how did you decide, like it wasn't just a sabbatical, it wasn't just a break, it wasn't kind of like um a mini retirement, like, but you decide, like you were closer to I'm done than I'll go find my next job in a few months. I'll take a few months off and then start looking. So I'm curious, like, did you have like extra self-awareness there?
Well, that remember that rudimentary financial plan I had kind of put together
Mhm.
when I first
Like
started my career, when I got
early
my first paycheck?
2000s?
Yeah,
Yeah.
early 2000s. Well, essentially, what the numbers were saying in the current version of the plan at that time in 2017 was that, hey, we've met these goals, right? This was the
Okay.
whole impetus for that 15-year period. Like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get to this point and then we're gonna do something different that's not monetarily motivated.
Okay. So actually that's at least like, because you had some like written down, like you had like created this idea and then you achieved it, you felt like you could stop, like, because you had decided in advance that you could stop at this point. Because I'd say it's much more common to have like a moving the goalpost kind of feeling of like the plan 15 years ago, like, is we'll get to here and stop, but then 5 to 8 years go by and like, oh, I don't want to get here, I want to get to here and stop.
Right.
And so like your 15-year plan becomes like 5 years later, it's no longer a 10-year plan, it's a 12-year plan.
Yeah.
And 5 years after that, it's not a 7-year plan, it's a 6 year, or it's a an 8-year plan. Kind of like, so like it kind of keeps pushing out. Like it gets smaller and smaller, but you were able to kind of keep that idea of, hey, here's what I said I want to try and do, and 15 years you accomplished it.
Yeah, it's kind of the mentality that helped me get there, that kind of sped things along or kept me on track. For example, even to get there, you have to keep things under control. You have to keep that long-term focus into view,
Mhm.
meaning it's so easy to let lifestyle creep get in the
Yeah.
way, or scope creep in terms of objectives get in the way. Like, oh, we could have a second house, or this many more cars, or this one, right, or that, right. But I think it, it maybe comes back to my temperament. Aaron, you and I have talked about this in some other conversations, but the human condition is kind of to always want more, right? Or to
Mhm.
over
Yep.
optimize in a singular direction. And life is about balance of all these competing concerns. And it's easy to continue on that track of just a bit more. But we
Mhm.
know, right, that has diminishing returns, not literally, but just
Yeah. Yeah.
the emotional benefit.
The utility of like the increased enjoyment per extra dollar spent goes down.
Yeah, right. So um just keeping that mindset present, in my thinking is what kind of helped that transition. Realizing that just adding another X amount or achieving another financial milestone wasn't really going to make a big difference. And
Okay.
frankly, I wanted my time freedom, right? I wanted to make decisions that weren't financially motivated, which
Mm.
meant I wanted to choose to do things that technically didn't involve a career that was highly time focused.
Yeah. Okay. So like the self-awareness wasn't like an in the moment thing. It was, you had set or planned something out, even just like a Excel spreadsheet of like, here's savings plus rate of return, like compounded 15 years. But the fact that you did some kind of work so far in advance kind of helped you realize you achieved this.
Yeah, I don't think it was one of those things where I had this magic number on my wall and I looked at it every night and
Hmm.
saw myself inching closer. It was it was like one of those things where you just have a high level objective, but you know what you need to do. Just save a
Okay.
ton and keep working and don't spend a ton, right? And
Okay.
let the investments do their job. And it was one of those things where in that year, we kind of opened up the portfolio. I maybe check it once every year or two, right? And say,
Yeah.
hey, wait, we're already past the finish line here.
Okay.
Let's reevaluate things.
Actually, I'm curious, like, if you can remember the feeling when you opened up, like, how far past the finish line did you feel?
Uh, Not incredibly, but here's how it was. It was like, okay, well, we're actually there. Like we're
Okay.
and it was one of those like, if we plan this well, we can do this, and if things go in our favor, it's gonna be fine.
Okay.
Which is kind of what happened.
Okay. Yeah. So now we'll get to the other question. A lot of your prior success came from building a team to solve problems.
Mhm.
I found a problem and you couldn't do it yourself, but were kind of given the opportunity, the resources to build the team, and you seem to really enjoy that. And you seem to take, or at least take pride in that from our past conversation. So now I kind of get to like, why do you think you're never going to do that again?
It's interesting. So how should I character? I would say I was good at it. I don't know if
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Okay. Oh,
As
that's a good distinction. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's important to clarify. It was something that came naturally to me, but I think I mentioned this in my previous conversation. My goal was to make my life easier. Like,
Okay.
so that was the objective. Like, if you're gonna work, you might as well make things more efficient.
I the, I have joked around with my wife Jessica, like, I want to work so hard that I can be lazy.
Yeah, right.
It's I don't know how, like, there's probably better ways of phrasing that, but that's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah, it's the whole work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah.
So you want to do things that pay dividends, and
Okay.
if you're in a job, you can do things that pay dividends to your career so that the um the less you work, the more you get paid, essentially, right?
I have both my wife and I've seen other people who get into management that their teams love them, their higher ups love them, like their teams are successful,
Yeah.
and they feel like they are managing themselves out of a job, kind of thing. Like the team almost
Yeah.
gets to a point where they're self-sufficient enough that they don't need someone telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that commentary before.
That was my goal, empower my team so that they could do anything they need to do to grow the business. And
Mhm.
again, if any small things come up, okay, I'll handle that as needed. But really, my goal is to make myself obsolete.
Okay, so the no employee, so you were good at it, but you didn't necessarily enjoy it.
Yeah.
So before we get to kind of thinking about, I guess this probably, like, let's talk about like the you've talked about in the past about how the blog transitioned to like answering questions from friends and family to, okay, I guess I'm going to register to like collect some of it. What when you describe a little more succinctly if possible, like that transition from blog to business.
Right. Yeah. So again, I just started the blog to kind of keep busy. I thought, let me write about finance because that's what I know about.
Okay.
And let me write about my journey of it and what I think makes sense. Because I started noticing a lot of things that I think didn't make sense, when talking to friends and family and things like that. So I, I think when I was doing that, there was something else going on in the background. I think, Aaron, again, we've probably mentioned this as well, but I was traveling with my wife and we were doing lots of camping and stuff like that. And we realized with a small kid, a bit more structure is sensible. Just having
Mm,
completely open ended days and just doing whatever isn't great for a very young kid or ourselves. It's just
yeah.
too much to plan out. Like, oh, we got to plan a whole nother day, another vacation. We just got back, right? Let's get some structure into our lives. And I mentioned this to you, Aaron. I just took a blank sheet of paper and said, "What's my ideal day? Right? What
Mhm.
should it look like, and how should I structure it?" And I included, like exercise and some outdoor time and time with family, meals, actually making good meals and eating healthy and all that. And I put in some hours of doing some type of work, or, writing blog, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I were also reconsidering our plan, and we noticed one thing. Again, we were living off the nest egg, having that
Hmm.
support us. And interesting math, right? That technically, if we could just cover our expenses and not touch our nest egg for another 10 years, the nest egg would roughly double, right?
Okay.
Law of 72, where if you invest in the market, things double every 10 years or so.
Getting a 7% rate of return.
Yeah, exactly. So interestingly enough, we're like, okay, well, we just need to cover overhead, right? And we did the math, and it worked out to something like, oh, we just need to each work like an hour or two a day to
Okay.
cover our overhead, right? We're like, oh, we can do that. And then 10 years from now, which is coming up, we'll be like able to live double the lifestyle we're living in that we had planned for on living on a
Yeah.
go forward basis, essentially. So we're like, okay, we could do this, right? What's an hour or two a day? And then I started thinking more sensibly about a business. But again, Aaron, I mentioned this to you. I wanted to call it a practice, meaning I wanted to do
Mm.
something where I'm not scaling it to grow it into something big, but I wanted to do something that brought me fulfillment and kept me busy for that
Hmm.
hour or two, which essentially meant something where it doesn't scale or it doesn't grow, right? So that
Yeah.
might help answer that question. And specifically, it's something that I can do on a go forward basis. The actual desire of the business, my wife and I were watching this show where this guy sat, and I don't even know the name. I don't think it even lasted more than a season, but this guy sat in a cafe every day, and he had a tip jar in front of him, and then random people would show up throughout the day and just put like $100 in the tip jar, and they chat with him for an hour. He'd give them profound life advice.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've heard about this show, because I
I
don't think
have not.
anybody
I
else
have not.
has, and I don't think I'll be able to ever find it again. I could probably, but I don't know. If you know the show, put in the comments, and we'll give it a mention. But essentially, I was like, hey, I could do that. I could talk for a bit about what I think makes sense if somebody wants to
Yeah.
pay me X amount of money. So I started looking around, and I noticed there was a consultant's website I passed onto, and he was like a marketing consultant or something, but basically had a calendar, and you just book a time with him, and you pay $100 and you get advice for like an hour, something like that.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, this is what I'll do.
Okay.
I need 2 hours of my day filled up. I'll do that. I'll have the calendar set. So these are the 2 hours, and I'll give people advice, and that's it. I'll just talk, right? And it'll give me, something to do.
Hmm.
It won't be too much in terms of commitment, and it'll keep me busy, and it'll hit this new revised 10-year plan of doubling our net worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm now curious, like, how did that transition from like joining XPOPN, getting registered, and like, I don't think that's your current structure. You don't have like an open calendar. You pay it. Someone pays you $100 for an hour. But like, I'm now curious, how did that part transition?
Yeah. Well, okay. So it turns out it's a lot harder to just do that in the financial space. There's a lot
Okay.
of regulations and infrastructure you have to set up to give advice, just
Okay.
to throw out financial advice. And again, I was coming from a different space. I was in the hedge fund space, which technically we were a registered investment advisor as the
Mhm.
hedge fund. However, we had a whole team of people doing compliance and legal
Yeah.
and ops and all that. And all of a sudden, I had to learn all this if I wanted to
Yeah.
just do this small bit of giving advice. So I had to learn about personal financial planning as a career because
Okay.
that's not what my previous career was. And going through all the motions, I started learning, oh, okay, this is what a financial practice is. And
Okay.
this is actually what goes on, and this is how the fees work, and this is what you need to do to register, and if you want to deal with money, and etc. So it was a big learning, not a steep, a gradual learn. Oh, it was a
Okay. A
curve.
gradual learning curve.
there was a learning going on, and
Yeah.
that then I realized, oh, I got to take these exams, right? The series 60, I guess it was the series
65 or
65,
66.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a series 3 before, which was being able to trade commodities, which is
Okay.
little to do with personal financial planning. So I got to learn all this stuff. And as I'm learning, I started, evolving into, okay, this is how I might want to structure this and how I might want to build this up and so on. And, I started thinking, okay, what do I want to do to still keep my goal of working a few hours a day, a few days a week, and
Hmm.
so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm a little bit. What led you to get your CFP? Because like this is not required for those like minimal hour or two per day, 3 or 4 days a week kind of thing. Like this is you actually going above and beyond to further your own education. I thought for the benefit of the business and kind of slash for the benefit of your clients kind of thing.
Mhm.
But when did you feel like you transitioned from just looking to kill a few hours to okay, I'm actually kind of taking this seriously.
Yeah. Well, I guess that goes back to XYPN, right? So I was looking on how to set all this up, and I quickly realized I'm a bit over my head to do this all on my own.
Okay.
There's quite a bit you have to do, and I'm kind of fortunate to have found XYPN. As I was searching for different ways to get this type of business going, and one of their criteria is they wanted you to be fee only. We'll get to that in a bit, but they
Okay.
also wanted you to have a CFP.
Oh, to be able on their find an advisor function.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even to be part of the network, the intention has to be to get a CFP.
Oh, interesting. So I had my CFP before joining. I was under the impression you could join without it, but to be on their find an advisor site, you had to have one.
That
But I
might have
guess
been it.
I
But I
could
think there's
see
some
them.
intention. Yeah.
Yeah, like they would like you to be pursuing it, and they provide a lot of
Yeah.
resources. They provide scholarships. So they really want to try and push this as again the XYPN members advisors are educated enough, and so they do consistently have a CFP.
Mhm.
But I did not know it was a like requirement that you get it. But that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I think it was a bit soft on that, but at that point I was so invested into getting this thing going that okay,
Okay.
let's just do this now. And I was going through the criteria. It wasn't so bad because a few of the hurdles were the education requirement, like an undergrad or something. I had that with
Hmm.
the MBA. You needed a couple years of work experience. I had that with the hedge fund that
Yeah.
qualifies. So I was with an RIA. So I just needed to take some courses and an exam. So
Yeah.
you know, of course, in hindsight, I think it was well worth it. It's a great designation. It helped me
Oh,
learn a
yeah.
lot about all. Yeah, so it's certainly made me better at what I do. I don't regret any of that. And certainly, if I'm working in this space, I think it's something that I felt uh, was important to have.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So this actually kind of so why fee only? Because it sounds like it was not only XYPN's requirement.
Yeah.
This is something else you had been thinking about separately.
Yeah. So initially, again, it was just going to be pay me some monies, I'll give you some advices, right? Like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
simple transaction, nothing too crazy. So that fit fee only quite well. In fact, again, my background wasn't in personal financial planning, so I wasn't aware of all of these distinctions. I was aware that the commission based model and the broker dealer model, where call up your broker, he recommends products,
Yeah.
you maybe pay some commission on them, or he places trades for you and stuff like that, or he puts you in some actively managed funds and gets a kickback. I was aware of that. I wasn't really so aware when I started this whole thing that fee only was a thing.
Okay.
I did realize early on that yes, I wanted a fee, and that's it. Oh, so
Okay.
it somehow fit directly into it. I think a big part of why fee only was my just original thinking before I even knew it was a thing is because I knew the conflict of interests that
Mm,
underlie compensation, just having been in the industry, and I just wanted to um, clear all of that away, right, as much as
okay.
possible.
So
Having yeah.
that's interesting. Kind of like, so for me, I had my insurance license and I had to let that go. I also had my Series 7 and I let that go.
Hmm.
Um, and so for me, I guess I had not considered the idea you never had an insurance license. So
Yeah.
like there's it never even enters your brain like, oh, I could also sell insurance, but then I have to go back to feeling like, no, like, why would I sell insurance? I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about, like I studied in the CFP, but like why would I add this thing?
Yeah.
But I think the commission and the broker dealer side, it's similar. Like you'd have to go get a Series 7. You'd have to like add stuff, like both like work and conflicts for something you don't want. Because like I think
So
like I've told the story about the non-traded REITs and like those really nice wine and dine due diligence conferences. But if you ever experienced those and you didn't have the Series 7, you didn't have the insurance license in the first place, it's like there's no incentive for you to do the extra work for something you don't want to do anyways.
yeah. It's interesting. Again, I started the blog before all of this, and my first few articles were about fees in the financial,
Okay,
in the
okay.
finance industry, because I'm like, okay, this is what people really need to know about. I just felt like it was so important, and what I really honed in on was the impact of fees on long-term performance when it comes to investment products.
Okay.
And I just started writing about, well, there's the 12b1 fees and the actively managed fees, and then
Yeah.
coming from the hedge fund world, the 2 and 20,
2 and
and
20.
just
Oh yeah.
yeah, and I just started showing like, hey, this is big. Like you don't need to spend a lot on investment products anymore. They're effectively commoditized. You can get index products for close to nothing in fees. And this should be supporting your long-term growth in the majority of cases. And that's what I started laying out. And again, this is before I even thought about the business as
Mhm.
an enterprise of any sorts.
So I'm gonna ask you like a total sidebar because I actually read something written by Daniel Yerger recently of like
Hmm.
for granting the idea that like yes, if you didn't pay an advisor, if you had perfect strategy, you could have more money down the road, but no one's actually perfect. They actually have good studies and research that humans behave irrationally often enough throughout their lifetime that they can't do the perfect strategy.
Mhm.
Do you have a something that you tell clients when they ask you if investments are commoditized, why should I hire you?
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. There's two reasons. What you pay me for is not for investment products that are supposed to do better somehow, right? Than
Mhm.
any of the other products out there. But what you paid me for is advice, and it's specifically the implementation of that advice. So, for example, Aaron, at this point, you and I have probably said all of the advice on these podcasts publicly
Yeah,
available for everybody, right? For free.
that is probably true. Yes.
Yeah, which is great, right? You can get anything you want to implement um, a great financial plan and a great investment strategy. It's educational.
Yep. If you listen to the
From our
last 145 hours of our podcast,
right,
you will
yeah.
probably be able to do everything that we can do for you.
Yeah. So there's nothing secret, right? So what I'm selling is the implementation of that plan, right? Over
Mm,
those ideas, meaning, you can watch as many YouTube videos as you want of people doing exercise and
yeah.
weightlifting and all that, but you probably would reach out to a personal trainer if you want help actually getting that done, right? If you want
Yeah.
the assistance, the side by side coaching, or the expertise to apply to your specific situation, right? That's what we do.
Yeah.
And with the implementation, there's things to do, certainly.
I like there's also the the expertise level and the personal trainer one thing is like if you could talk to a personal trainer, they will help you figure out should you get on the rowing machine, an exercise bike, go running, lift weights, do Pilates, yoga. Like they can help you figure out what is best for your body. and they can do it
Mhm.
pretty quickly, so you don't have to use time. You could also try to learn everything that they know about physiology and biology and kind of the impacts of different exercises on your body, and you can spend the time learning that before you even have your first workout class. Like, you could choose to do that, but that's a level of you're paying for the expertise and for the implementation. Like,
Mhm.
it's there. You want someone who's already done the education to help you make a decision.
Yeah.
Where, yes, nothing that we have is secret. There are no trade secrets, and almost anyone who has a trade secret is probably a red flag.
Right.
But there's definitely a lot of knowledge and education that you don't have to spend the thousands of hours that we have going through, like, both work experience and the CFP knowledge and additional post CFP knowledge as well, and education. We can kind of summarize, here are the two things that apply to you,
Yeah.
and then we'll help you actually implement and make sure it gets done.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly true. And then also, if you don't have somebody like us and some new financial situation comes up, and then you got to reach out to a financial professional, and then you got to say, hey, this new thing came up. Can you quickly help me? Blah, 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 blah. But they don't know the entire history of your life to
Yeah,
say, oh, that's not a big deal. You just do X, Y, Z. Because you can't really convey that in like a 20, 30-minute intro call or even a 1 hour
yeah,
conversation, right? That they might not know that you're planning on buying a boat when you're 50 and a vacation home when you're
yeah,
60 and doing a Roth conversion strategy when you're in your 70s and so on. So, having somebody who is up to speed on your financial life, right? And also being
mhm,
an accountability partner to actually get the things done is, I think, helpful for some people.
yeah. I agree with that. It is those combinations.
Mhm.
So thank you for that sidebar of, uh, yes, investments have been commoditized. You could go to Wealthfront or Betterment, probably, and pay about the same that I charge, that my clients pay through other programs, to get just the investment asset allocation. But how much you save to reach different lifestyle goals, making sure you actually get it done. There are a lot of situations I've seen where, oh, we've had this cash sitting here. That's probably been a year, 2, 3, I guess probably been 5 years. It's just sitting there. Just haven't gotten around to doing anything with it.
Yeah,
Like,
Betterment may not know about that. Like,
yeah, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, I like that sidebar. So, when I want to go back to kind of your business, we've talked about the fee only, and I do want to get back to the going back to, like, the fire to lifestyle practice. Like, how much overlap do you think of? Like, do you consider yourself financially independent right now?
yeah.
Okay. Uh, do you ever think about retirement?
No. I think about balance, and I think, what can I do to make things more in balance? But I think we've mentioned this in the ideal day, week, year
Mhm.
conversation. I feel like I'm at a situation where I could keep this up indefinitely. I think I found a good breakdown, based on that sheet of paper, right, that I wrote
Mhm.
out when I started this independence initiative, and just I lining out would be an ideal day, week, year. Yeah, I think it's all flowed together pretty well.
Okay. So, thinking about how you've built teams in the past to make your life easier. Is there something you think about for that moving forward? Not necessarily building a team, but that making your life easier. And I'm hoping the answer isn't just like AI, but like, um, I'm curious, as you look forward, kind of where do you envision your lifestyle practice and that feeling of just trying to make your life a little easier?
Yeah. I think that goes back to the original vision of the business. If I can show up to a meeting, um, talk, and then have the meeting over, that'd be close to ideal, right?
Okay.
And then, there's work to be done, but typically that's more admin type of stuff, like movie accounts, trading, etc. Not too
Mm,
crazy. So even before the AI stuff, I set up the business, using completely virtual technology, right? And
mhm,
had no plans for an office or anything like that. It was even before COVID. Everything's online. All the tech stack is using, latest integrated technology. So it all talks to each other. And I use my project management and CS background, computer science background, to just stitch everything together in an efficient way. So I even realized early on I'm doing quite a bit using the technology that I think in the past an old brick and mortar business would have required actual, physical overhead and
mm,
um, employee overhead. Because, for example, a simple thing like Calendly, right? Just a
yeah,
scheduling.
yeah.
I remember my dentist in Pennsylvania, they had a sheet of paper that was their calendar. And if you would call up in the evening, the secretary would take that sheet of paper home. And if you called up in the morning, one time I called, I'm like, "Oh, can I change it?" They're like, "Oh no, you have to call back when our calendar gets here," because one of the secretaries was driving to work, and literally that's their only record of when people could, schedule meetings. And I imagine, that could be like 30% of that individual's job, right? Just making sure that's
Oh,
all tied
maintaining that
together.
calendar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maintaining a calendar. And this is done automatically with Calendly, which is, I don't know, what is it, Aaron? Like $20 a month or
Oh,
something?
I have the free version
Okay, yeah.
'cause I
The
only have one
subscription?
meeting type.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Right.
you schedule an
So,
hour. That's
yeah, the
everyone schedules an
marginal
hour.
cost dropped to nothing, right? And it's even better because you call up the dentist, they're like, they say, "When do you want," they'll say, "You have, how about you come in this and this?" They'll give you 2 or 3 dates, right? And you say,
Yeah,
"Oh, no, that doesn't work," and they give you 2 or 3 more. Literally, just let me see the calendar. I'll pick
yeah,
my date, but it doesn't work like that. You can't do that over the phone. It's very, um arcane, frankly, right? But
yeah,
again, with Calendly, you get something much better, right? You can see the dates, you can pick, you can reschedule without having to pick up a phone. You can do it
yeah.
from your tablet or your smartphone. So little things like that lead to a business that can be pretty efficient, right? That don't
Okay,
doesn't require an incredible amount of overhead to get going.
okay. So I think you might have answered this. I wanna, like, give you a chance to expand on it. What about your current practice do you truly enjoy enough that you would not want to give up?
I do because in my entire career, I think I get the most fulfillment now, right? I can see genuinely that I'm helping clients in a way where if I did not provide that advice, their life would be different.
Okay.
Yeah. And, tell somebody who's been working their whole career that, hey, wait, you're financially independent. You don't need to,
Yeah,
scrimp and save anymore. You've already done it, right? And the feeling that somebody can get from knowing that, from not knowing that, right? It's life changing.
yeah,
Right? Or just, if we make these changes, we can accelerate the time for you to reach independence by years, right? Than what you're currently doing. And
mhm,
again, it's the smarter, not harder tactic, meaning if this is not a big deal to make these changes for you, especially like, look, you've been in cash, right? For all
yeah,
these aren't hard changes. You just haven't done it yet, and so on.
okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanna make sure that you don't give up or you don't automate out kinda thing?
Well, yeah, yeah. The actual meetings themselves, I think, are where I'm able to provide the most tangible, unique value. Where we're
Okay,
able to sit down, discuss issues, come up with solutions, come up with a game plan. Once we have a list of action items, then it's just a matter of brute force working through them.
okay,
And often they get titrated to very similar items that don't end up being incredibly unique on a per case basis. right? And when it comes to the managing money aspect, there are, beginning of the month, money may go out, so I have to rebalance for that. End of the month, money comes in, rebalance for that, and then monthly performance check on each account. And that can also be pretty well structured and streamlined.
Okay. Is there something from your past that you would have wanted to hold on to?
I think it, I mentioned that uh, we started this where I didn't exactly enjoy the building teams. It wasn't horrible. Again, I was good at it. So I
Mm,
got a good amount of satisfaction. And I was doing things that I felt were making a good amount of impact because,
mhm,
I think the worst position is working hard and not seeing results from it. Right.
mm.
And it wasn't that we were making good progress. It just wasn't what I really felt I wanted to do with my time. I think that was it. And I think that goes with a lot of things when it came to the career. Um, I, so when you're saying what I liked, well, I think anything that I liked, I can pull into this type of job, and anything else, I kind of can forego. So it's hard to say if there's anything that I had that I couldn't still do.
Okay. Not sure you answered the question though.
Yeah.
Is
So
there
I,
anything in the past that
I
you would have wanted to hold on to?
yeah. So
And this answer is like nothing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. There were some good things, but again, I can replicate that. Meaning, I liked meeting with my colleagues, but now I can meet with my friends who, okay, I can don't have to call them colleagues anymore, but they're
Yeah.
similar people or the same people, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to say, right? Yeah, it was nice to, uh, go on the fancy trips, eat at the Four Seasons or private jets or Mar-a-Lago, right, for our office party and so on. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't quite me.
Okay. Okay. So if you, like when your daughter is out of the house, I know this is really far away. Like, can you envision doing the same thing?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. it- yeah. That's the plan. I don't see
Okay.
why any of this would change. Yeah. It's
Okay.
pretty comfortable. Like I think the schedule and routine I've set up, it gives me a few hours a day to do whatever I want and a few hours a day to be productive. So I think it's a good balance.
Okay. So one of the things that we have talked about a lot when it comes to fulfillment and well-being and kind of happiness is this idea of like improving somewhere. Like you're always working on something. You don't want life to be all easy. You want to have challenges that you can overcome.
Yeah.
What do you think those are for you? What is that moving forward feel like for you?
Yeah. So I think the first 40 or so years have been the bigger challenges. Like becoming financially independent, right?
Yeah.
Getting a house, getting married, having a kid, doing a whole career type of thing. Obviously, the education that was a predecessor to all that. Um, so I think the next things won't be financially motivated. Um,
Mm,
a- as much as I can try to not let that happen. Even with the business now, I'm trying not to expand. Like I put a
okay.
wait list on the website. I'm like, I'm pretty upfront with clients. We're nearing capacity and so on with prospects. I mean, we're nearing capacity and so on. And so it's just other things, but I don't think I'm looking for anything big, which is fine. I've had this conversation with myself. I'm like, what would be the next things? And I think it could just be a refinement of the stuff that I know I enjoy at this point.
Yeah.
Like I have so many hobbies that I'm not great at, but I could be a little bit better. Right? I'm not really good at much, but I'm okay with chess, and I'm okay with being crappy at chess, but slightly better on a go forward basis. For example,
Okay.
I picked up woodworking, right? But that was something I started
Mm.
doing. Not woodworking, carpentry would be more apt.
Yeah.
But I picked
Do
that
you
up, and
do you pay for unlimited puzzles on chess.com?
no, I don't. I just play with people, and I get their once a
Okay.
week puzzle.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like hiking, and I'm not great at it, but it's something I could do indefinitely. Right?
I I'm not sure how you it's just walking uphill. It's like you
I
walk
think it's underrated.
either you oh no, I truly enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
But it's like if it's hard, you just walk slower.
Yeah.
It's like when we say like I feel like I'm not great at hiking. I don't know how you can not be good at hiking.
Well,
How you could be like go ahead.
yeah. So you can choose hiking spots that are more challenging than others. For example,
Oh,
like
okay. I see
you're
what you're
not going to
saying.
make it to the top of that peak if you don't work hard to and focus on having that intention. But you can go around the lake as much as you want because it's
Okay. Okay.
flat. So 80-90% of my hiking is the lake, and I'm fine with
Okay.
that. Just Florida is flatter than a pancake. Like
So so uh we're okay, so I've always thought of like hiking is like uphill kind of thing. It's like up the mountain kind of thing. You're using hiking to describe a nature walk.
yeah, well, okay, so there's a spectrum here, of course, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Like you can go on a trail where literally it's paved, the whole
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
6 feet wide, don't touch the thing. And then one of my first trips in Malaysia with my old CEO over there, we were jungle trekking in the middle of the
Do you need a
Malaysian
machete?
rainforest.
Do you have a
Yeah,
machete in
yeah,
your
yeah,
hand?
yeah, exactly. So we he was a big survival guy, so we had these army commandos take us out there. We stayed overnight with we had open air tents, so no actual enclosure, just like a canopy over us. And I, I remember at night they had to throw off fireworks to keep the wild boar away because they can get too close to the camp, and that's not great if you're a human. Uh, and squishy. But yeah, so that was relatively flat, but you are
Okay.
whatevering.
Okay.
Yeah,
I see that's on the spectrum of it's not uphill, but it's still
yeah,
challenging.
yeah. So around Florida, that there is various spots where there's trails that are more challenging than others, where you will
Okay.
be going through some terrain that's a bit typically more just muddy that you have to worry about, but it is overgrown is how
Okay.
you might look at it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you got hiking, you got I think so when I think of carpentry, I think like you're building a chair.
Yeah.
Woodworking, it's like you're building not furniture. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if we've talked about this on this podcast, but yeah, I built like a bunch of benches and like a picnic table and stuff like that.
Oh, you did mention that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
That's carpentry. Yeah, I'll go with that.
sure.
Are
The
you
loosest
sanding
end.
everything and finishing everything?
Yeah, yeah. You got the whole what do you call it? Circular saw or the sander and orbital, blah blah blah.
Yep.
Yeah. You got the mask, right? You gotta be careful of the particles. But yeah, there's probably a dozen of these types of things where I'm just not good at it. I don't want to be great, but I can be a little better. Is
Okay.
my rough intention. Like scuba, snowboarding, things like that, like kayaking, right?
When was the last
And
time you went scuba diving?
uh, last summer,
Okay.
September, like 5-6 months ago, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So there's enough of these things that I don't need any big things that are grandiose, right? I
Mhm.
think I've done enough of that to say, let's just focus on these little things and get slightly better, and then we're kind of
Okay.
good. Yeah,
Okay. As you described that as thing, like I have the tools to do something like woodworking. I've done projects in the past. Um, built a clubhouse for the kids during COVID. But these days it's my wife is practicing golf quite a bit, so I want to try and catch up to her. I've not beaten her in a while. I play pickleball a decent amount. Still have a tournament coming up in a couple weeks, so I'm trying to get better at pickleball. Skiing, snowboarding. Like I was doing some work to really make sure that my legs hold up as I go down. It's like that actually paid off. I was doing a lot of wall sits starting in November. So the time I did a ski trip with my dad and my brother, legs felt great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could say it's I do have business goals as well. Just 'cause I'm at a different stage than you are, and trying to ideally make sure my wife doesn't have to go back to work. That's kind of my business goal for myself. But there are non-business things that I am trying to work on as well.
Yeah, so I mentioned, that 10-year plan of if we hold off, things will double, and then things do compound. Another 10 years, it just gets a little silly, right?
That's actually okay. So that's I want to come back to that. So 2017,
yeah,
was 8 years ago.
Yeah,
Your 10-year thing is 2 years away.
Yeah,
but it sounds like your business and your wife's work is covering overhead again.
Yeah.
So it almost comes back to that enough question.
I know. Yeah.
Are you just going to leave your daughter a lot of money at this point? Because if you could do this to fill the time and cover your overhead for the next 20, 30 plus years.
Yeah.
It's are you ever going to use the nest egg again?
It's a good problem to have, right?
Oh, totally. But this is what a lot of client situations come to.
Yeah.
This is why you hear a lot of advisors talking to their clients in their 60s. They're like, you have more money than you need. You need to spend more.
Yeah.
Or you're funding your kids' retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something to really think about. Yeah, for sure. It's been on my mind. It's certainly on my mind when I'm thinking of specific client situations, because as you said, it's common. It does come up where you have a situation where, what are you going to do? This doesn't make any sense. There's way too much coming in that's going out. What happens now? And you need a plan, because you're just going to stave off the problem for the next generation. It doesn't fix anything. And there's some understanding that it just may make things worse for the next generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing you want to do is set people up for failure, right? When you could be doing the opposite. So it is, I don't know if we want to go down in this whole other side of can of worms as we're nearing the close of the hour, but
we'll save, I think, advice to clients when they have more than enough, and especially related to kids' values. I think that's a good separate conversation.
Right.
I think I want to ask kind of for you, at what point, what are your just thoughts as of right now? You don't have to have a plan in place, but how to use your nest egg to support your ideal life, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because right now it sounds like your business and your wife's work, that and just a few hours a week, that's supporting your current lifestyle.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts? How would you use your nest egg to support your ideal life?
Yeah. So again, the 10-year plan was just figure out a way to cover overhead, right? And we'll be okay. Now, there was some scope creep there, because we had actually first decided on a more narrow overhead when we shifted to financial independence than where we are now, because we assumed that we had so much free time, we wouldn't be spending so much. But it turns out we're kind of back to our previous pre-financial independence transition lifestyle in terms of spending, which is fine, because still the overhead seems to be covered anyway. So, but at the same time, now we're getting closer to the second problem of, okay, if the next 20 years we keep this up, now what? And we're just leaning towards that discussion in our minds right now because, again, we're just nearing the end. But frankly, the last 7 or so years was more about filling the gap for that
Yeah.
10-year period, which is just coming to light, to completion, I guess, as we near the end of this stretch. So honestly, I don't know, but part of what I've mentioned earlier in this conversation is I'm trying to put the brakes right on the business and trying to specifically, as we mentioned in the beginning, not hire employees,
Yeah.
not try to expand, not try to make this bigger than it needs to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have some. If you were my client, I have some questions, especially related to your daughter
Yeah.
and like values you want to teach her. But I think that's a different conversation for a different day.
Right on. Well, there was one small point that I wanted to make about the fee only aspect. Looking back on how my personal portfolio has done, and then also just being in the industry, I really came to realize that the passive investing carried the majority of the weight of the performance of the portfolio.
Okay.
And fees have a big part to do with that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, one of my original blog posts was, if you are paying more in fees for investments products, it will detract from your long-term performance. So I think that's part of the key. When I was at the hedge fund, I remember, Aaron, I did mention this to you. I came across a study towards the end of my stint there, and I saw the performance of hedge funds. Y-axis was how long the hedge fund has been around. X-axis, was
Yeah.
how long the hedge fund had run around, and the Y-axis was the outperformance. And they threw on all the hedge funds, and you could see a very nuanced curve. When a hedge fund is around for a few years, their outperformance look great. The
Yeah.
longer they've been around, it just kind of flatlined towards zero outperformance. And this is something I review with all my clients. Not only that, but in all the areas of finance, including active management for mutual funds and for all of these other types of fancy products, the more you end up paying in fees, the lower that expected performance tends to be.
I can see that. I probably similar interpretation of um I have a conversation with clients who have a large single company stock holding. And most of my clients, they have stock options from their employer. That's why they came to me for help. And we'll have a very brief conversation of like, well, what's our rate of return assumption for that stock? And like, it's either gone up dramatically, down dramatically. Like the past returns are so wild.
Yeah.
I think, well, if I had to make a guess, I'm going to guess it's the average of all the stock returns over the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And like the S&P 500 is not some like magical thing. It's actually just the average of all the stocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so some stocks will do 15%, some will do 5%, but a large enough portfolio will just average that 10-ish% per year.
Yeah.
Over the last, again, multiple dozens of decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, well, I'll guess that it's gonna behave like an average. I have nothing else to make a guess of, oh, it doubled in the last year, it's gonna double moving forward. Well, no. It's also not, I'm not doubled last year, it's gonna underperform moving forward. Like that's also, there's some reversion of the mean, but I think that applies to a larger portfolio than a single stock. It's like, no, I'll guess that it's gonna grow just like every other portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
But our range of outcomes is so big compared to a diversified portfolio. And it's like whatever happened over the last several years, I'm not saying it's going to be repeating. I'm not saying it's going to be the opposite. It's just we're going to get back to the average. Like
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, we're going to see the average. So I can see the same thing with kind of fees. Like some managers will outperform over some time frames. And there's no indicator that they can repeat that outperformance moving forward.
Yeah.
They're just as likely to be average returns minus fees.
Past performance does not indicate future return.
Again, it's not saying that like, oh, it doubled last year, it's going to come down so that and this is a what's the gambler's fallacy, the
recency bias.
No, there's a if red comes up 3 times in a row, there's neither a trend nor an opposite. It's again a 50-50 thing.
Independence.
Yeah. So it's that idea, like it doubled last year. I'm not expecting it to average 10% over the last 2 years.
Yeah, there's no
which
memory.
would require it to actually come down.
Right.
I'm expecting moving forward to average the same as all the other stocks.
Right.
So, yeah, there's no reason to assume that any future return is anything other than average. Again, it will be a wide range. It's going to be wrong. It's more likely to be wrong than right.
Yeah.
But we just kind of have to assume average minus fees.
Yeah. And here's the hitch, though. Average is not bad. It has a bad connotation, but average is quite awesome. You throw that average number into the projections and everybody does great. Like, let's do this. Like, we can all do this. You don't need, back to that original financial plan that I threw together in my 20s. You don't need that outperformance number to make all this happen, right? You just need that average market return to come through over market cycles.
Yeah, that comes out in a lot of, and that's usually one of the ways I help clients understand that they don't need to take on the risk of the single stock.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm not going to illustrate, oh, the stock's going to grow up 15% per year. Like it could, and we can take on that risk if they want to. But like, you only need regular stock market returns for a few years to be where you want to be.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to add too much because
okay, that's a good place to wrap up for today.
Good stuff, Aaron.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing about your current business, kind of how we got from your origin story as a hedge fund manager who achieved FIRE to a fee-only lifestyle practice that is not looking to grow.
Good stuff, Aaron. I enjoyed the conversation. And, thanks everybody for listening, watching. If you're enjoying this stuff, welcome to leave us a comment or also give us a like or subscribe. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day. We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money